Jake, thank you so much for coming on the AIM podcast.
For sure. Happy to be here, Doug.
Let's go, bro. I'm really excited. I've had a chance to kind of get to know you over the years. We met initially, I guess, a few years ago, and recently saw you at the end of last year when I got to come train with Luke Parker at Mayhem for a couple days, and just have so much respect for you, man, and so much respect for Mayhem and really just what you guys have created by allowing your faith to be so bold while having so much success in the CrossFit space.
Absolutely. Mayhem's a really, really awesome place. Super fortunate to be there. Have great people like Luke. Luke's obviously got more energy than anyone, and he loves fitness
We
as
love
much as
Luke.
anybody else. So, yeah, Mayhem's awesome, and that's true. Yeah, at the end of last year, I remember seeing you with Luke, and Luke was definitely getting after that week, and you guys off each other for sure. So it's a
Man,
good place to be.
that was a fun week with him, getting to spend a couple days in train. That was my first. That was really my first time getting to spend. I've been to many CrossFit events in the space, Rogue, Wadapalooza a couple times, and you get to see it, and it's like it's amazing. But when you get to go and stay for a couple days and be around these guys and see their whole daily routine, it's a whole different ball game, man. And I was like blown away just to see the level at which you guys train and you guys coach and you guys, all the things you guys do is so fascinating to see, at the highest level, what you guys put into this from a coaching standpoint to a training and a recovery, all of it. It was super fascinating.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, really, in a lot of ways. I don't know, I would imagine hadn't trained quite that level for something like that, even just for a few days with Luke. But because CrossFit is, well, it's unknown and unknowable, but like it's so measurable, the things you're trying to improve at, whether it's a back squat or a running distance or a max rep on gymnastics, whatever it is, all these things are so measurable within that athletes can train to improve in those ways. And like in most sports, you can overcome by beating the other team with hand-eye coordination or just being a gamer. Obviously, like hard work goes in and is a huge part of it. But with CrossFit, you can dial in so many things with nutrition and sleep that these athletes really on some levels like train more and harder than or as much as anyone else in any other sport, even like elite NBA, NFL, or baseball players, or whatever sport you want to pick. Like they can train so much and so hard and dialed in, even though the sport's not even anywhere near that level of viewership. So these athletes are like the best in the world what they do, and their level of training, preparation, and competition is as high as really any other sport, which is makes me love it in that way because of those things. But yeah, Luke puts in the hard work for sure.
He sure does, man. That's amazing. No, I couldn't agree more. And I have a background in basketball, so that's like where that's my world, right? That's what I know, and spent time in college, and obviously I've got some friends that play in the NBA and get to see some of the way that they approach their training. But I agree with you, man. I think people don't understand the depth that these athletes go to in terms of training and preparing for their competitions. And speaking of that, I mean, you guys are right around the corner of the CrossFit Games, coming up in a couple months. I know that's probably where most of the high level athletes' minds are right now as they get ready for this intense season. What's that been like for you, as as a coach, as president of Mayhem Athlete, like just to really be honed in and focused on probably the most important time of the year?
Yeah. So games training is the most fun time of the year, I would say, because the game's the most hyped. It's a ton of like work to get there every year for these athletes. Preparation, like semifinals, if people don't follow the season, there's like the open, which is unique because anyone in the world can do it. From there, 25% now make what they call quarterfinals. And then from there, 40 from each region of the world make semifinals. And I think there's like seven total. I should know that off the top of my head. But anyways, we just had semifinals. It was like qualification. Now we're at the games, and now it is super fun because it's dialed in. It's like very specific to the games, which is more cool style workouts. It's usually what people see on ESPN. Like that's why I started CrossFit 10, 11 years ago because it's all Rich and all them throwing down ESPN doing awesome stuff outside. So it's super enjoyable to like work with, and now it's even more fun in some ways because we have a coaching staff that we didn't have in the past with our one-on-one coaching platform, which coaches competitive athletes and like Dom and Foster, some of these guys that are in our space now that they're not as well known, but they're literally the best in the sport. So getting to work with them makes me better. And as we like program the workouts for athletes to do this summer, think about each athlete specific, like Roman would have won the games last year and Facundo coaches him. And so how can we like change up his summer to help them win it? He hurt his ankle to not get too in the weeds with it, but him or other people we have and how they attack their training to do better. So it definitely is super fun, especially with later in July. Like we'll have a bunch of teams at Mayhem, teams coming from Australia or South America, and
Wow.
athletes from Asia, literally all over the world. July is wild. So it's
Crazy.
a lot, but it definitely is like the most fun time because of those things.
Man, that's so amazing. It's so interesting. So I'm curious, man, like what goes into, and we honestly have a lot of people that listen to this show love fitness, but not everyone. But and I think there'll still be things to gain from this. But there are a big portion of those people that do like CrossFit as well. I'm curious, what goes into preparation for the games in terms of like as a coach, as someone who's programming, helping prepare these athletes for that moment. CrossFit's so different, right? Because you don't know what the workouts will be for the games yet. How are you approaching it in terms of like, are there certain things you're looking for? Are there certain things you're trying to make sure they're hit? Like, how do you go about that process? And is it the same for all the athletes? Or are they on different plans? How does that process work?
It's a great question. I'll try to like make it broadly interesting without getting too nerdy with it. But like most sports, like the off season would be more time like where you need to work on exactly what you need to work on, at least for sure with CrossFit. So like if you suck at running, like in October, September, November, you would do a ton of running, where someone else they're really weak will do a ton of squatting or whatever, but not as much running. As we get closer to the game time or the games itself, everyone's doing more of the same thing because like if you're not strong, now is not the time to get much stronger. And we
Right.
know more closely what the workouts will be like, although we do not know at all what the workouts will be. So we use history as a teacher, where like we know heavy lifts are coming, like it might be the Olympic lifts or it might be a back squat or deadlift. So we're not gonna get a lot stronger, but we want to get comfortable at our higher end of our strength right now, like comfortable with those higher percentages. There's probably in the history been a lot of outside type workouts, although it's in Texas this year, but it's in a big arena. So we're figuring that out. But like more running, typically at the games, if there's 13 events, like 3 or 4 may have running, which is way more weighted towards that. Usually one swim. There's going to be like 4 or 5 pure CrossFit. So it means like pull-ups and thrusters or muscle ups and wall balls or rowing and handstand walk. So we'll still do pure CrossFit within all that. But we really look at the past, like what these events have been like. And sometimes we'll pull weekly training pieces off past events to create a similar stimulus. We'll still work high end, like gymnastic skills, like a handstand hold that's really skilled. Things like that are rotated in. And we have, thankfully, subject matter experts. There are great coaches like Pamela Gagnon helps us with that, or Sage Bergen will help us create strength programs. So we like don't like try to guess per se. In the past, sometimes I'll try to guess like, ooh, I bet this overhead squat max can come up, and like you don't want to program guessing exactly what it is, but you can
Mhm.
guess like the stimulus to be created to program off that, which would then apply broadly to whatever would come up. So less there's some guessing, I guess, but it's really just programming based on what's happened, what's likely to come up. Like they're going to swim, so let's go and pull and swim lots of distance, different speeds, prepare for whatever can come up within the swim. And you kind of structure your week based on those things and what days make sense. And so like Mondays typically look very similar, but not the same. It progresses within that. Kind of like any good training plan, like you probably a lot of people bench every Monday, but you don't bench the exact same every time if you want to
Mhm.
get stronger in it. So it does get complicated, but those like broad principles of similarities apply even to games training.
Yeah, that's fascinating, man. And I'm assuming like so my what I'm doing now is more running focused. I still do strength training, but training for this ultra. But like I'm assuming there's a similar structure in terms of a taper or some sort of like process towards they get closer to the games where you guys will maybe dial back intensity and volume. Like what does that kind of look like to get them primed for the actual competition?
We actually talked about that some because I'm running a lot more right now too. So is another one of our coaches. Like we're gonna do a marathon this fall, but so like there's extra science terms people use like building volume or intensification. So right now we're more building volume, and games training is kind of insane because even though we do more and more each week, you hold the intensity. So it's almost like right now we have actually 8 weeks. We're in week 1, and we know for about 6, 7 weeks we're going to build volume and hold intensity, and then
Wow.
about week 8 we'll like drop the volume drastically and intensity. And so we'll hold volume just as much as they can with lower intensity they can recover. And so like everything will kind of come back to life. Just like if you run a marathon, like that last taper week, it's like your legs are dead. And then you taper for 6, 7 days. And then like on a race day, you feel like you have a brand new pair of legs underneath you.
Yeah.
So that's the goal is to make it as much and as difficult as training as possible. So they're just adapting enough week to week to week and getting better and fitter. And like they're going to feel like dog crap at the end of each week. And then Monday, just get around. And then that taper week, as the 4 or 5 days set in, they're like starting to feel better and better and better. By the time the game's day one hits, like they're firing on all cylinders. So the principles are actually this very similar to running or kind of any sport, but running's an easy example with that too.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And how many, really quick, how many games athletes will Mayhem have represented this year?
Yeah. So there's 40 men and women that make the CrossFit Games, and there's 30 teams this year. We actually have 14 individuals, so that'd be 14 out of 80, whatever that breaks down to.
Wow,
We've been super like
that's
obviously
amazing.
platform helps. But yeah. Every year we've had like usually 12 to 18 or so, and we usually have the most of any camp within CrossFit or team. Then we actually have 9 teams, which is the most we've ever had. So I really want one more to have a third of the teams filled. That's pretty insane. So we really, yeah, our team staff does an amazing job, and then like thankfully we have tons of athletes that trust us and like want to be part of what we do. So that's really the 9 out of 30 is pretty remarkable.
That's awesome. I want to talk about your personal story, your background, and how you even got plugged into Mayhem. Obviously, I want to dive deeper into Mayhem and, highlight some of the incredible things you do with faith and fitness and the combination and intersection. But before we do that, let's jump into your story, man, because I want to learn more about you and some of the things that you've done to get to this point. I know you referenced you about 10 or 11 years ago, I think is what you said. You saw Rich on ESPN, and like, hey, I want to do some CrossFit. But what was your upbringing like that got you to this point to get plugged into this equation?
Yeah. So I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We live in Cookeville currently, where CrossFit Mayhem is. I went to like a small private Christian school, played sports my whole life, grew up, went to church like 2, 3 times a week, basically my whole life. Had a really good youth group, had a good friend group for the most part at school. So I went to one kind of church and school, really on my upbringing, was super into just being competitive with mostly sports. Played football, basketball, soccer. We actually my senior year lost state championship in football, and like I didn't care anything about soccer, but we won that in soccer. So it was like that was my whole goal. Like basically my whole upbringing was like win a state championship. That's all I wanted to do. So
Let's
I did
go.
that. Then went to Tennessee Tech here in Cookeville because I had some friends come here from youth group and school, and they had a good school in general. It was like close to home but not too far away. We could get away actually. So did freshman through senior year here, and was really plugged in with a local church here in campus ministry. Actually grew my faith ton during that time. I was a Christian since like middle school, but like a lot of people with a faith story,
Mm,
like didn't really take their walk with Christ seriously, maybe until like their late teens, early 20s. And that was
yeah.
for sure true of me in that time. And that campus ministry was pivotal in that with mentors I had there to do that. Actually, in the similar time as I like really started to like go all in with who I want to be with Jesus, 2011, 12 was when I had friends going to work out at the Tennessee Tech Athletic Performance Center. At that time, I guess Rich had won his first and second games, kind of in that timeline, 11 and 12. And I went and did my first workout. And I just played intramurals in college, didn't play sports. But the first workout was like a lot of people just hooked. Like we did running and learned how to kipping pull-ups and kettlebell swings, and like 50 dudes running around at that gym and like shirts off. I'm like, what is this? This is awesome. Immediately just hooked on that. So we started that. And then the next year or so is when the first location people think of as a CrossFit Mayhem opened. And I was just a gym rat there, would work out all the time. During this, I'm getting my degree at Tech and actually started working at campus ministry as like an intern or a student director, whatever term you want to use for it. So kind of doing those 2 or 3 things in that. Started to coach at the CrossFit Mayhem. This is like around 2013, and me and a buddy were kind of just gym rats, and Rich just invited us to come work out with him at his barn at the time. And then like not everyone was coming. It wasn't as big. It was growing like as a brand with Rich's success, but like it wasn't as huge as it was. So we kind of got very right timing, right place, and so trained with him that year. I tried to be competitive, but like I was definitely not making the games or gonna even may necessarily be on a team at that time. It's kind of like trying to make the NFL, but I was never gonna get a like D2 or D1 ball. Like that's kind of like the reach my potential. So worked out a ton all the time, going to school, doing campus ministry. Got married in 2013, 14, excuse me, with my wife. I met there at Tech in the campus ministry.
Let's
Um,
go.
got my master's. I did end up competing on a team or two with Mayhem. And then in 2016, I actually moved to Nashville to go to physical therapy school. And that was like a super stressful decision, actually, but it just seemed like the right thing to do, right place, right time. I'll give a quick plug. I'd never fasted in my life. And then on one day, like I could not decide. It was like I'm literally a month out from PT school and I told them I was coming, but I didn't know if I was. So I fasted that day in 2016 in May. End of the day, I just knew the answer I was supposed to go. And so we went.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was the right call. So I got a physical therapy degree over a few years, still worked with Mayhem, like running the online What's Rich Doing or Mayhem Athlete, follow workouts online people do. It was just smaller at that time. After I finished PT school, I actually competed on a couple teams in CrossFit, the regionals, same thing as semifinals at the time. We didn't make the games or anything. And so 19 finished, 2020 rolls around and COVID hits. And kind of that time, a lot of pieces had fell into place for Mayhem. Like we had more products to offer. We had the reach on media. And so some things like that, along with people just wanting something to do at home, we started to grow really exponentially during that time. And I was able to actually stop doing physical therapy full time, came on at Mayhem. And since 2020, probably seeing the media of Mayhem, everything's grown a lot. And Lord really blessed us through that to be able to reach a lot of people with fitness and faith. And so the next few years after that, we really poured a lot into what we do at Mayhem and grew it from a platform, fitness standpoint, apparel, and a lot of things. We moved back to Cookville here in 2021. And since then, been running Mayhem Athlete, involved in some other things at Mayhem, primarily that, and just trying to grow the best we can. We also have 3 kids, have one more on the way. So
Let's
we
go.
have like 4, 5 and under. But yeah, we have a great life here. That's a quick overview of it all, but yeah, for sure. God played, I can look back. Usually, as we go forward in life, I'm still stressed out about tons of decisions. What we're supposed to do, what's the right thing. But looking backward does always make you hopefully feel better in life and see how God's faithfulness played through. Even when bad things happened and things weren't sure, still in the things that were bad at the time, I can still definitely see his faithfulness. And uncertainty, he's always going to be around, but he is
Good.
certain in every time. So the Lord's been good and good things are still going to happen.
Man, now what a story, bro. Thank you for sharing that. It is cool. I love hearing people's story on the show because it's you look and you're like, man, like all these little decisions and little things had to happen to get you to exactly where you are today, having this podcast and being in the seat you are at Mayhem and whatnot. And it's so cool to look back in our lives and say, man, if one decision would have been different, like maybe you could say none of this would have happened, right? It's like, and just to see God's hand on your life, it's so amazing. The fact that you're a father of 3, on almost 4, and just to see the success that Mayhem's had is truly impressive, man. What does that look like from like a family work standpoint? Like as you've had children, like I'd love to pick your brain as like from a father perspective, how you've been able to um grow your family and be present with your family while also leading such a powerful opportunity to grow one of the, one of, if not the biggest CrossFit group in the space.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm super passionate about like obviously guys like being serious in their faith, and now being a dad and husband. I may have been a husband, I guess, actually 10 years this summer, and a dad will be 5 years. It's like there's people done it way longer, but we need more good fathers and we need more good husbands. So
Yeah,
that
agreed.
is something that's huge that we need in our culture. And to think about a bigger scale, the reason I think our culture falls apart so much is because father's absent in a ton of homes, or the father's just not a strong leader.
Mhm.
Um, but thankfully, I have a really great dad, good relationship with him. My dad's awesome. Like my boys call him Pops, and he's like he's a great granddad. And so I have that, and then a bunch of other strong male role models in my life to look to for it. Also, like Rich is a great dad, and like he loves his kids, and he loves having kids at Mayhem, our kids, other employees. So that's cool of my workplace. I definitely do work a lot, and I am fortunate enough my wife gets to stay home. Nancy does, and that's something we always knew we wanted. Like
Mhm.
financially, especially earlier when I finished PT school, we were just going to make the sacrifice and just make it work. When I finished school and she was done teaching, we were having Jake, our firstborn kid. I know it's tough for a lot of people to do that, especially now with rising costs and inflation, but I think it's invaluable to have Moms stay home if at all possible. Like it's not for everyone all the time, but as a good general rule of thumb, is something we strongly consider. It's so worthwhile the amount of time you get with your kids. So um, that's something we're able to do, which is huge for our kids. My mom was able to stay home, so was my wife's, and so we value that. Just working, I'm actually bad about work-life balance. Thankfully, I have some flexibility in my job. I can work from home some days or take time off or do what I need and still get the job done because a lot of it's remote. But the unfortunate other side of that is you can do work at any time, all the time. So
Yeah.
with that, it's tough if you can't always leave work at work. So creating boundaries is something I'm trying to work on just like time in the day to do those type of things. And like when I have my family, I'm with my family. And I struggle a lot with being present because my mind wanders, like gets going, and whether it's about worries or just projects that are going on or things I'm excited about. So I had to work really hard to do that. I think one huge thing all fathers can do is I have to do is like literally leave your phone out of the room. So I'm starting to learn is, I mean, we
So
only
good, bro.
so much time with our kids, and we'll know the kids the rest of our lives. But you think about it, the majority of the time we'll know our kids, they'll be adults, but they won't be kids. So we
Yeah.
like this small pocket where we actually know our kids as kids. And so like very few things in life I've been aware in the moment to like not waste it. And like I'll look back like, man, I really didn't take advantage of that with kids. I'm even more so thankfully being aware of like this time is precious. Don't be scrolling on the phone. Don't be doing stupid stuff like that when the kids
Yeah.
are here. So I've actually tried to leave my phone literally out of the room or like in the car more nights when I get home. So I'll be present from, 6 to 8 when they're going to go to bed.
Mm.
You've got to prioritize your family. You got to prioritize the time with that. That means you still work hard. You go to work, you can work a lot, but when you're home, be home and then block those times. At some point, you're just going to have to make the sacrifice to like be home with your kids when you should. That means we do work hard. We're men. We
Yeah.
go out like you're working 40, 50 hours a week, even more sometimes you have to, but like you're still going to value time with your kids and make sacrifices other places as you give up hobbies or give up whatever it is. So I haven't figured out all on that front, but I just know
That's helpful.
precious kids, they need dad to be here. They need to see
Yep.
me. They need to experience life and know how to do that. I heard it was said the only way God makes godly men is from boys. So we need to be
Wow.
strong men. I have a daughter too. Nellie's the best, but
Go.
same thing with that. Yeah, I'll get going on kids and the dad thing because it's a big deal.
Well, you said a couple of things to just pull from that. I'm so glad you identified because this is so, so good. You talk about the importance of really powerful mentors. You talk about, good leaders. I am in 100% agreement. Like you can't be a good leader if you're not led well. Like everyone is led by someone else. And I think at the end of the day, to an extent, obviously, but I think at the end of the day, like you identified, having a great dad for you, having Rich around, like you're able to see these other men that you can learn from and grow from, and now you're going to be that man, and I'm sure you already are that man to so many others, even like myself. Like I'm picking your brain right now. I'm single, I don't have kids, but I look at you and have already learned from what you just shared, so I appreciate that. And then the whole piece of intentionality I know is big. I've been, one of the things I've been doing is like with my phone in the mornings, I'll keep my phone on do not disturb until after I've read the Bible. Obviously, I don't have kids yet, but I'm taking that same kind of approach of intentionality with the word because I found myself, I'd read in the mornings and I'd start getting boom, boom, notification, calls, text, whatever. And I'm like checking it, putting away, checking. I'm like, I got to turn this off. I got to like be really focused on the task at hand. What am I doing right now so I can give it all my attention? And like you said, like when you're with your kids and you're making that time with them, you want to give them that same intention. So that's good, man. That's really powerful.
For sure. You make a good point. You got to be in the Word every day. You got to be in the Word in prayer. I have a decent routine with that. It's not perfect, but like no phone, don't check messages first thing you wake up. Do not check Instagram. I struggle on the messages, not Instagram, but like just keep it off your phone if you have to. Delete it and re-download when you gotta look. But the first thing hack I kind of do, I don't have my phone by me, but I have the YouVersion Bible app and like the verse of the day is pulled up. So that's the first thing I see. I try to click on it and start my Bible reading plan when I start the day as I'm getting ready,
Mm.
drinking water, use the bathroom. If you do that, you can read through the Bible in a year and like no problem. I do it
Yeah,
every year. I basically read through it as I'm getting ready for the day, and then I'm done. And I journal some and pray. But yeah, you can't try if all possible to push back like getting going and transitioning your mind to like go time and work time until after spending some time in the Bible and praying. Even if
mm,
it's just 15 minutes, it's just
bro.
gonna frame the day, and those little things add up if you keep that every single day. If you think about like we only ate once a week, you're going to be starving. If the only time you hear something about the word is at prayer, about the word is at church once a week, then like you better be eating a lot. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. And same thing, I think about prayer, and or really reading the Bible. Angelo, when our athlete, said it well. He's like, I think if I had ate twice a day, I would be okay. So he tries to read his Bible twice a day. And I was like, I
Mm.
really like that. So you got to eat at least once a day. Think of it that way.
Yes, dude, that's so good. I'm glad you bring that up. I like look back on days where I haven't been in the word and I'm like I can feel it. Like I can feel my heart. I can feel like my interactions with people, man. And I'm about to launch a brand later this month. It's going to be called Seek First in reference to Matthew 6:33, seek first his kingdom. And I think that's been something that's a verse I've been praying over. And I'm like, man, if God is really number one in my life and he is my priority, do my actions reflect that? And it's like, dude, like again, I'm not telling everyone here this is what they have to do, but similar to you, like what I've found for me is when I read first in the morning, when I spend that time, when I prioritize, when I seek first his kingdom, like everything else changes, man. Like there's so much going on in our world and there's so many high demands. And I'm sure you have a lot going on with your athletes and work. And, I'm running multiple businesses and speaking and doing different things. And I'm like, as soon as I turn my phone on, it's like it's game on for the day. And so I need to make sure my heart's in a position where I can glorify God through every single interaction I have to the best of my ability. And when I don't prioritize him first, it's really hard to do that.
Yeah, it really is. You can just, yeah, you set your mind on him. I'm trying to think of a good verse that reflects it. There's a bunch of them, but like you said, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, you can just tell a difference. And throughout scripture, lots of places, and I was just in Luke, I think 6, Jesus got up early, went away to be with him, the Father. Like almost any great spiritual mentor that I've had or that you really see out there, they're getting up early, they're spending time doing those things because it's like you have to do it. It's kind of like anyone that's really fit and healthy, like they're going to spend an hour of their day working out a lot of times in the morning. It doesn't have to be, but like it just gets it done. So the same thing applies there. And yeah, got to do it. If you only talk to my wife once a week, then like we would have a terrible marriage. If I miss one day talking to my wife, it's usually not a good thing. So that's another way to think about it.
Bro, that's so good. We always you relate it to food and an important earthly relationship, and it's easy for us as humans to like understand that, right? But sometimes we get disconnected from our relationship with our heavenly Father, and it's like, oh wait, like I can go a few days without talking to him. But the truth is we need that interaction, we need that constant connection, similar to these needs that we have here on earth, which is those are cool too illustrations. I like those. I want to talk to you about man, so you've been with Mayhem for 10 or 11 years, is that correct?
I guess the 2013, so 11 years I started like coaching there. So yeah,
Coaching and you've seen the journey the whole way through, man. I want you to talk about that because obviously, as you guys have been dominant in the sport of CrossFit, like I would love to hear more about what's gone into that success, like what you've been able to experience over the course of those years and why you guys have been able to position yourself and earn that kind of spot is the premier top, place in the sport.
yeah. I mean, without a doubt, the number one reason is just Rich is the most dominant CrossFit athlete ever, winning 10 CrossFit games, 4 as individual and 6 on a team. So number one reason for sure there. And Rich just has when he competes, like aura about him. Like people just love watching it for good reason. It's entertaining and it's like aspiring, kind of like people loved watching Michael Jordan. Like obviously he won, but kind of the way he won,
Yeah.
interact with competitors and just was dominant. It was so um, inspiring to watch. So that's for sure the number one way and the number one reason for all that. Along with that, those times, like Rich is a great programmer. Like he don't even call himself like a coach per se. Like he's a training partner as much as anything. Now he's a mentor and coach to some of the athletes there. Now he's done competing, but through the process, like he'd win on teams. Some athletes would come to train throughout the years of 15, 16, 17, 18 and on. Like people just came to Mayhem to work out because this is what happened. Rich would be working out, throwing down with a team or other athletes. It was kind of the hub of a place for people to come to do that with him. Like literally almost every big name in CrossFit has made their way through those doors to train for a week or even longer stints of time. So it
Yeah.
really built the foundation. And then kind of 2020 on, as we grew as an organization, we tried to, I guess, pour more fuel on that fire with highlighting the athletes that are there, along with Rich, obviously, the team, other individuals. and do that and try to capitalize on it, which the team we built did a great job of that, especially like our media team's like one of the best in the world, not even necessarily with regards to fitness, just period. Some of the content they put out
Yeah.
is truly like as good as anywhere else. So they do awesome. Now we have a great coaching staff, like I mentioned, that coach one-on-one athletes in some higher level to try and like make it sustainable, I guess, as a team and as a sport long term. Because Rich can't work out forever, obviously. So
Yeah.
we have that too. And then we have so many good people on in our company that work literally from our head coach of the gym that runs it so well, so professionally. It's like partnerships with, I know you met Ro before. He's the man. He's worked at CrossFit and he has the eye for media. And even my personal team that works with Mayhem Athlete, like we try to really embody faith, family, fitness service, which are Rich's values. They're in our company values. And that's one of the biggest reasons anyone interacts with us as a company is because they can relate to those things, whether it's faith and like Christ, or it's just they love fitness, or they like have a strong family, or they just want to serve in some way. And so we try to differentiate ourselves through those things, and provide that as a like lifestyle brand or community, obviously with fitness that people can be a part of.
That's incredible, man. I love it. Yeah, I love what you guys stand for and represent. And like we've discussed, like you guys have been incredibly dominant and had tons of success within the sport of CrossFit and the fitness side, but the way you guys also touch on family, touch on faith. And these are important things that, it's cool to see you guys don't shy away from, but instead quite the opposite. You put them up and emphasize the importance of them and how they are an integral part of the success you guys have from a fitness standpoint. It's all a holistic kind of approach.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one. I mean, we truly want to honor God through that. Like we say, we believe in faith. That means like we pursue Jesus. Like we're not going to be broad and general about faith. Like, no, we're doing what Jesus says and we believe. And there's definitely people that are in our Mayhem, quote unquote, broad family that aren't Christians. And we want them here, but we're not going to hide behind some generic brand of faith, I guess is a good way to say it. We're going to say we love Jesus. We want anyone that wants to be with us here, but like we're not going to hide behind who we say we are or who we would not say we are. So I think that makes people successful in business. Like you look at anyone, like they put their stake in the ground. They're like, oh, this is who I'm going to be. This is who I am. Because business in general, if you say you're something for anyone, you end up being nothing for anybody. Uh,
Yeah.
so I'm saying along the general lines, which I believe in, like even the biggest companies in the world, like Facebook, originally started out just for like a website for college students to connect on, and then become enormous through that. So that helps us in that sense too. Is like we say exactly who we're for. In some ways, some people naturally won't come to us because they're not for them. But we're definitely going to keep our stake in the faith, family, fitness service.
Amen. I love it. And it's cool to see. And again, I have just got to experience a tiny fraction of the powerful community that you guys have. And I'm hopeful that I get to experience more and come hang with you guys more often. But even just getting to build a relationship with Luke and seeing some of the things like how connected you guys are. Like when, for example, Luke had his beard and I don't know if was it Angela's wedding or was it somebody's wedding where
Yeah.
he did everything but the mustache. And like just to see someone go to that length of he was growing a great beard, it's like you guys obviously really love each other.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh, Angela. Angela loves his mustache. No, it really is like that's what makes it great too, is people are genuinely like friends and close
Yeah.
and tight. So in a lot of ways, that's what makes Mayhem special too, is like people actually want to be around each other and like we are friends, and it is not a church, but it has a lot of similarities to a church in a lot of ways like that, with how interconnected people are with working out together, but then beyond that, friends outside the gym and just life in general.
And I'm sure from a coaching perspective, like you're invested in these athletes' lives and want to see them have tremendous success, and podium and do all these great things in the sport. But you're even marrying, you're officiating weddings and doing all kinds of stuff. So I mean, you're obviously really well invested in their lives beyond just what they can do on the floor.
Absolutely. That's the best part of it. Most fun favorite is being such good friends with athletes now, like Tyler and now Bailey Christophel. Like you said, I got to marry them last summer, which was so
That's
much fun. Sam Cornway, he's my boy. We're real tight. I coach him. He's may got fifth at semis and is going to be the games for like his fourth or fifth time.
Mm.
And then another one, Jack Rosema. I've got to coach him some of the season. He qualified his first time. Like I help with everyone. Like those are my four direct, I guess, athletes now. And well, Bailey's retired, but like even Guy and Roman, like I'm out there and like for them, I'm not quite as like literally riding their programming, but you get tight with the athletes, which is really cool. And there's a lot more out there too that I'm definitely friends with and talk to regularly, but kind of have my core group that I stay texting probably daily or close, and then on site will be with them. But yeah, the relationship's a thing, and that's what's great about Mayhem. Like with me and these other coaches that are there now, like we want them to be fit and we want to win. We go out there to win. I think we
Yep.
compete to win. But at the end of the day, like if they win or lose, I really just want them to know who Jesus is and glorify God. And that's
Come
what
on, bro.
great. Like we as a staff, like that's our aim. So we want them to win, but through that, ultimately, want them to shine their lights. They'll give glory to their Father in heaven, which is great too, because no one's going to carry one of the CrossFit Games in 2024 and
Come on,
10
bro.
years or 20 years. And that's what I say all the time. You know who won the Super Bowl in 2006?
Nope.
It was the Indianapolis Colts. I only knew no because I'm a winning fan. But even the Super Bowl, no one really cares. It was 20 years ago. Like it's great at the time, but it's not going to matter ultimately. So keeping those things and your perspective is a big deal because these can seem such like a big deal. And it's like in 20 years, it's not going to matter that much. So that's great that we get to have that as our central purpose.
You hit a trigger word, man. You said aim. That's what our podcast is called. And dude, it's funny.
Trigger.
It's honestly so funny you say that because like I haven't done a full on explanation of this process yet. I'm going to do a full podcast on it at some point. But when I started this platform, it was called AIM, but it stood for ambition in mind. And the whole idea was like, help people to be ambitious and do all this. And while at the time I was walking with the Lord, I wasn't intentionally trying to be like do it out of selfish ambition. But recently the Lord has convicted my heart and brought me to Philippians 2:3 about do nothing out of selfish ambition. So I'm sitting there like, oh snap, like should I be pushing this message? And then I was like, wait a second. But in Acts 20:24, it says, my life is worth nothing. Like my only aim is to do what Jesus Christ has told me and to testify to the good news of God's grace. And so it's like my only aim is to testify. My only aim is to lead people to the cross. My only aim is to let people understand that there's freedom in the name of Jesus. And that's where I was like, okay, this is what it is. We're just going to say aim now. We're just going to talk about what is our aim? What direction are we pointing? What is our aim? And like you said, you guys love to see your athletes succeed. You love to see them have success in the sport that they put so much into. But ultimately, you guys have one aim at Mayhem, and that's to lead people to Jesus, which is incredible.
Absolutely. It's a good aim. And really, whether you're competing in CrossFit or like doing business or whatever it is, it's a lot more freeing to operate from that mindset of this is why I'm doing it and how I'm doing it and who I'm doing it for. Because otherwise, if you don't have that and you lose, then like everything's all boiled up in that loss and all your efforts and it won't mean anything. And even if you win, once you stand on that podium or you get that check written or you the amount in your bank account or whatever it is, then it's not going to fulfill you. And it's like, well, what's next? And
Mm.
so competing or working from that freedom mindset and standpoint of like this is for Christ and I'm gonna do it for his glory and it becomes for him. And if it fails, then like we did all we could, but like if God's good and God's sovereign and control, then like that's what it's meant to be and it's better that way,
Amen.
rather than all your worth being wrapped up in that thing whether it goes well or not. So
That's good, bro. I have to ask you, man, do you have any powerful lessons or stories you've learned from Rich or been around Rich?
oh yeah. I wish I was a better storyteller. I need to be a better storyteller. I was trying to think of a few. Man, you just learn to suffer. That's a good thing to learn is learn how to suffer. CrossFit taught me how to suffer. I'm not as good at it anymore in CrossFit, but definitely learned how to suffer well with especially so many back in the day we used to work out all the time with Rich and he was working out a ton. So I remember one time we were working out and I was like, I'm not a big complainer, but I was complaining about something, the workout, whatever it was. We are doing a bunch of double unders and muscle ups, which I definitely sucked at then. It's like something about the workout was like this too much. And he was like, dude, I would never subject you to anything I wouldn't do myself. And so that's always stuck with me. It's like, that's true. Like he would never tell us to do something he wouldn't do himself. I think that's good from a leadership standpoint. Like you're never going to ask anyone to do anything that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself or you haven't done yourself. So that's definitely true. Uh,
It's
Man,
good.
Rich is really so dang good about just getting present when he's competing or training, or now he loves hunting, so I'm sure it applies there too. Whatever he's in, he's like all in with, and he's absorbed in that moment with that, and that's why he's so great at CrossFit when he did. So being all in with that thing and consumed and becoming great at it through enjoying the process of it, that's for sure true too. I can't think of any other insane, crazy training stories. I mean, there's so many. off the top of my head is tough, but those are for sure some things I've learned.
Well, I'm curious because like you talk about mindset a little bit when you alluded to like the way that his approach, right? He likes to suffer. Like, and I'm curious because you study people that are the greatest. You know, it's cool. You've been able to work alongside of, with, train with, and now work with, and for one of the greatest, if probably the greatest in CrossFit, obviously. And these you get to experience these different people in different places. But from a mindset perspective, like what have you learned about him or some of the other athletes you guys train at the top level? Like, are they preparing mentally for competition? Are they having that same mindset in training? Like, what have you learned from a mindset perspective?
Yeah, that makes me think of one of my mentors is Jim Hensel, and he actually runs Mayhem Mindset. And thing he always go back to with Rich and then other competitors are like really the best at what they do in the sport. Like they just flip the switch, and they kind of have that with Kobe. Everyone loves Kobe. I do too. Like that Mamba mentality or that kill switch, and like it's almost like they don't even have to work to get present. Like I said, when they're in the workout, like that is it, and that's all that's going on in their mind. They're not thinking about what anyone thinks.
Mhm.
They maybe think about the reps and set, but they're really just kind of they may have a general plan and feeling it out through the workout, but they're so in the moment they know what to do. You know that state of flow. Where there's some athletes that struggle on the big stage, like it gets outside themselves and they're worried about what people are thinking or saying, and like the best are just in it and they're all in. You can kind of see the way they just look at and attack the workouts. Like Roman, who's totally different athlete than Rich was in a ton of ways, but like he attacks workouts and he gets in the moment, he gets in and he goes. I mean, obviously the people that won the game since then can do that same thing, but like they just get in and they're not afraid and they get after it. And like there's not like a big question as if they can. It's just like how fast they can.
Mhm.
That's the thing about it. Some athletes that struggle in competition, they just get so much in their own head, so they have to be given tools or training like get out of their head and just go compete. But the best at it really do just get out there and they have kind of a God-given ability to just get in the moment and compete with anyone that's around them and believe that they can win.
Mhm.
So I think you can train yourself to do that, but at some level, like Rich and some others, the best in the sport now, like they just do it. So
Yeah. No, that's good. That's super interesting. The whole idea of flipping the switch is super interesting to me. And like, how do guys get to that point? Is it something they're born with? Is it something you can train? You know, one of the things you mentioned when you said suffering, a big message that I've been sharing a lot and just passionate about is suffering is a privilege. Like you look, like viewing suffering is actually something that we should be grateful for, and how it can be used to mature us, complete us, how we can be used to build our character, like, and actually view it as an opportunity to draw near to Jesus, and like to truly, we'll never fully understand the depth or the magnitude of the suffering he endured for us. But at the same time, when I've been in the most painful, you know, challenges, whether it be in stuff I went through as a kid or doing 100-mile ultra, like, you know, you get in these moments and you have to have full dependency on him, and not on your own strength, and it becomes such a privilege to be in a place where you're vulnerable like that and you're suffering for him.
definitely. Man, that's why you get so close to people in CrossFit, or if you go do an ultra or something extreme, because you're
Yeah.
suffering together for
Yeah.
so either intensely or long. Like my maybe favorite chapter in the Bible, I read it probably more than the others, James 1, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. So be happy when you're suffering, because you know the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, but steadfastness have its full effect and be perfect, complete, lacking nothing. So it's saying be happy when bad things happen because you're going to suffer and you're going to be more close to the complete person. You can be perfection, is what it says, because that's what God uses to mold us. There's tons of analogies. One I really liked, I heard from Alex Ramosi, who's like blowing up all over the internet. He said if you had to create a video game character and like make him the 99 out of 100 or whatever, like able to take on the boss or whatever, what would you do? You'd have to train him over and over and over and go beat the little bosses along the way so he can level up and like suffer and go through all those things. So eventually you can get to the big dragon at the end of the game and slay the dragon. So if you're in life, you're going to create like the unbreakable human being. What are you going to do? You're going to make that man suffer a lot so that eventually he can keep leveling up, leveling up, leveling up. And whenever that big bad thing comes, he's ready to attack it. And you know, that's what the Lord literally says through James and other places in the scripture. Like he's going to use that suffering to mold us and refine us into who we need to be. And so when I'm suffering, and now suffering is different than CrossFit in life because that's fun usually now, but like using physical training and even more so like the trials of life that are big deal to me, even though like in grand scheme, it's not the big a deal. We were in first century, excuse me, 21st century, first world America, the richest people of all time, but like the problems are still big in our head. and there's big suffering in the world. And so we need to use these things that God is allowing to come in our path today to overcome and level up. Because one day, I think 42-year-old Jake is going to need this 32-year-old me to get through the suffering. Because then someone's going to need me 42 to be ready to help them through something that's a lot worse than it is now. And you, 25-year-old Doug, or however old you are, when you're
Yep.
35 and 45, we better have been leveled up because our kids, our people around us, and the community will need us to be ready to help them in their suffering. Whenever suffering comes to us, then will be a lot bigger deal. But the Lord is using this now to prepare us for that. So looking at it that way does help some, because whatever sucks, it sucks in the moment. Like, it doesn't matter if it's not a big deal to some other people, to you it is. And looking at it that way does help. So in the moment, it's not quite as crippling, and helps you remember that, okay, God's so faithful. We're going to get through this. It's not the end of the world.
Amen, bro. Amen. Mic drop. Man, that was good. That was a word. That was real. And I know people listening to this right now are going to be encouraged by that, because the truth is, the fun thing to talk about is suffering is a privilege, but the truth also is that everyone is going to suffer at some point. Like, why we know that is because that's what Jesus tells us, man. Like, so many people think, oh, once you become a Christian, your life's perfect. No, Jesus actually says the opposite. He says that you will face trials and tribulation, but take heart, because I've overcome the world. Like, you will physically go through hard times on earth. We live in a broken world where there's that's in the world, and so there's going to be struggle, there's going to be pain, there's going to be evil, but the hope we have in Christ is that, he has died for our sins, and we get to put our full faith and identity in him alone and what he's done, nothing that we could ever do. And it's like, there's freedom in that, bro. There's like a lightness to that. Like, there's no weight you have to carry when you give it to him. And it's like, I don't know, it gets me pretty excited.
That's good. That's good. We might as well get excited about it, because no reason to get down, because it's coming one way or another. And yes, all doing it for him and knowing that there'll be rewards for it one day. Literally in heaven, we're going to be rewarded for the suffering we have there. It alludes to that in the Bible. Like, the more some people suffer, they'll probably have greater degrees of rewards in heaven for what they did for the gospel and the kingdom. So you're going to be rewarded for it then. And I think we will too now, with the joy you'll experience through it, for sure.
I love it, man. I love it. Man, what an episode, man. This has been so much fun. I've loved just hearing, about you and your life and your story, talking about family, talking about faith, talking about fitness, talking about, the great work you guys do at Mayhem. It's truly been encouraging. And I know people listening will have gained so much from this. But yeah, I just want to give you an opportunity, man. If there's anything else you want to share, or maybe a lesson you've learned, or some advice or encouragement, or whatever, however you want to wrap this up. But this has been such a fun episode, and I've really enjoyed it, man.
For sure. Dude, thank you for letting me come on. I guess I'll do two or three quick ones. One, we're probably out of time, but I know there's a ton of men out there that struggle with either anxiety or worrying, being anxious. I'm one of those. And so I would encourage you to, one, look to scripture, prayer, look to the community around you, find other good men, because there's tons of dudes that struggle with just worrying about the future, their circumstances. Are they good enough? Are things going to be okay? And like, God can give you comfort and joy and perseverance in that, but don't do it alone. Do it with other people, because there's others that struggle. Whatever it is you struggle with, mine is that specifically. If you're an alcoholic, like, find people who can overcome alcoholism, and that's going to be helpful to you. So just don't do those things alone. I think second would be faithful in the little things. Like, God will bless that. He says, like, we will reap what we sow. And so sow good things in this life, because the rule of the sower, is we reap after we sow, we reap more than we sow, and we reap what we sow. And so be sowing good things now, so God can bless that, and every time he'll reap that. I'm a huge believer in the sovereignty of God, and that gives me peace when I get anxious. I know all things will work good together for him, even though bad things will happen. But be faithful in those little things, whatever your job is. If you don't work at a super cool place like Mayhem, it's okay. God wants to use that, and he will. Whatever it is, whatever your workplace, and we need good, strong men in our culture and in non-Christian workplaces and the environment community to be lights for him, because that's what America needs. I love my country, and if you're listening abroad, that's what wherever you are needs, and God will honor that. So get with other good men. Don't be afraid. Be faithful with those small things.
Man, that's a word. Thank you so much, man. Where can people connect with you? And maybe we have some people listening today that are like, man, I'd love to train like a Mayhem athlete. Like, plug that. How can people get connected with Mayhem training and all of those things?
Absolutely. MayhemAthletes.com. check out there. We've got everyday athletes. So if you're like, I'm not super competitive, that's cool. We've got 30-minute body weight all the way to 1 hour in your garage gym. Like moms do it, pregnant people, all the way to 56-year-old masters to the CrossFit Games athletes for competitors. Then if you want to reach out or connect, just follow me at Jake Lockert on Instagram.
Come on, bro. Let's go. Man, Jake, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been a pleasure having you, and I'm just so grateful for you and the work you guys do at Mayhem. And I can't wait to see you guys dominate the games this year.
Dude, Doug, appreciate it. Can't wait to see you at the games.
Let's go. Thank you, bro.